Hello, and welcome to the Being Informed podcast. My name is Adam Ormord. I'm the host of the show. I'm also the president and the co-founder of LifePoint Resources. You can check out our ministry's website, lifepointresources.org. We have a wonderful conversation today with Abigail Doust. Abigail is an author, speaker, coach, and trainer. And she's also the development director for a great ministry called Thrive Ministry. We're going to talk about that on our episode today. Abigail also runs her own business called Equipping for Impact. I'm excited for you to hear this conversation, and I don't want to delay any longer. So why don't we listen in? Hello, Abigail Doust, and welcome to the Being Formed podcast. Where are you coming from?
I am in Denver area, Arvada.
That's right. You're not too far from me. In fact, we
Yes,
were talking about how I have the same kind of poster right behind me that you have back from when you used to visit Colorado back
that's
in the
right.
late 90s. And so, yeah, now you get to live here. We get to live really close
It's
to each
amazing.
other.
It's amazing. It's so beautiful.
It is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to, keep this conversation about Colorado going too long because I have a feeling it will make people, start to get a little more envious than they want to
That's
be
right.
listening to these
Jealousy is not good.
spiritual podcasts.
God loves all the people, all the places.
It's great to have you here to talk today about a really great ministry you care a lot about, and I care a lot about it too. And we'll get into the reasons why in just a minute. But before we do, I just want to ask you, how are you doing? And how is it with your soul?
Ah, such a beautiful question. I am well. I am coming out of a crazy season where I was very busy, and I am very grateful. Kind of like after you're sick and then you're up and around and you're like, "Oh, this meal tastes so good and it
Mm.
feels so good to walk and get my own thing or whatever." That's kind of how I feel the last 2 months. I just felt lighter and more focused, time to read, time to walk in nature, time to talk to God more than show up, hurry, God, what are you doing? So that's been really sweet. And so I am well. Yes, I'm in a place of healing and recovery, and I'm grateful for God's presence in my life. And I just kind of want to lean into that more, more of Him, leverage that.
Wow. Thank you. What a great answer.
Mm.
I appreciate your own ability to connect with your soul and notice things like that. And so, oh wow, this is going to be a great conversation. I can tell already. Yeah, I want to begin just by talking to you about where you find yourself right now as the development director of Thrive Ministries. What is the mission of Thrive, and who are the people that Thrive serves? And really, if you could just tell us a little bit about how Thrive began, and maybe
Mhm.
just those hallmark ministries of Thrive to this day.
Yes, absolutely. It's a privilege to talk about it. I want everybody to know about Thrive. We've been around 27 years, but there are still so many people that don't know about who we are and what we do. For the people who like the big picture first, I just want to say that Thrive serves women who are overseas, serving cross-culturally as missionaries. And we tend to use the word global worker, the term global worker, because in some countries it's not okay to be called a missionary. And we love coming alongside them so that they can do what they are called to do. We're all a part of the Great Commission, but their part was going. And there they are, all over the place, doing all kinds of cool ministries. I mean, everything from Bible translation to running orphanages to teaching English to missionary kids and anti-sex trafficking and on and on and on. Incredibly good work across denomination, across sending churches and sending agencies, and it's a privilege. So we love on those women. And 27 years ago, our founder was getting ready to go on the field, and she got delayed, as oftentimes happens in this whole world of going. It can be a little bumpy and unpredictable, but something got delayed and she didn't go yet. And she thought, well, I'll just use my time in the States to look a little bit at what my resources will be when I'm there. and she was incredibly discouraged at how little there was. And that's how they decided to do something about it. So today, the ministry has four important arms to it. We do international retreats, which is probably what we are most known for. We go to the women, we go to Thailand, we go to Brazil, we go to Cape Town in South Africa, we go to these places so that we can be near them, so that they can get to us and experience a beautiful retreat with us. And that's something that a lot of volunteers can go on and support, and we can talk more about that. But the international retreats are probably what we're known for, but not the only thing we do, because we offer a continuity of care all year long by providing free mentoring, life coaching, and spiritual direction to these women, virtually by video conference. And that's a beautiful thing for those women, to have someone safe and neutral that they can talk to all year long. We also have a devotional that is written by a team of global workers. 25 different global workers put together these devotionals that go out every day, 5 days a week. And then we have Gather, which happened out of COVID, but is still an incredibly positive thing. That's an online spiritual experience that resembles a retreat, but it's all online. And we have people from women from all over the world who join us for that. And so I think, programming is one thing, like those are things that are important, and that's our programming. But Adam, I really want to get to the heart of why we do what we do, which is to protect the soul of these women, to really be that safe place to kind of check in with them and ask them what you asked me today. Like, how are you? How is your soul? What is being formed in you? What is God doing? And how are you handling life? And kind of taking a page from Pete Scazzaro, I love emotionally healthy spirituality, but our emotional health is so connected to our spiritual health. So we are have the opportunity to love these women. Maybe we cut their hair, we take hairstylists, maybe we give pedicures. We do some things that are self-care that kind of let us peel back the layers to have opportunity to check in on their emotional level, their soul care. And
Mm.
it's a beautiful, beautiful ministry because we're just right to it. Women say, I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel like I'm known when I'm with you, that you get me. And it's such a privilege to bring that to those women because they have an important job.
Wow, that strikes me as such an incredible moment in one of these women's lives to be able to experience something like this. Are they able to go for free, or how does that come to them? How does that?
Yes, it's a nominal cost of registration, just because we want to make
Mhm,
sure we don't spend all the time and money on them if they are not going to show. So there's a
mhm,
registration fee, but other than that, they just need to pay to get there. And
mhm,
so if we're not too far away from them, that doesn't cost too much, and they have
mhm,
some budget set aside for travel and for things like that. Sometimes their church helps them get where they need to be, but then the actual retreat itself is completely on us. The hotel,
mhm,
the food, all the speakers, the musicians, the gifts, just the sessions are wonderful. And then they get breakout time for counseling and for spiritual direction. Maybe meet with a doctor, maybe meet with a physical therapist, all these people who come with us to show up for them.
mm. Wow. All this information is on the website, I'm sure. I think I read
Definitely.
on there that the size of the retreat will maybe be around 75 to 100
That's right.
people
We
at a
always
time.
budget that we can get 100 women. We can have 100 women that we serve at every retreat.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Wow.
the transformation is probably my favorite part because they come in on the first day and sometimes they're a little weary.
Mm,
Sometimes they're a lot weary and just discouraged and defeated. And they've been fighting a battle probably by themselves. Even if they have teams, they can feel very alone.
mhm,
And you can just see even the second day that their countenance is lifted and their eyes are back on him. And there are people holding up their arms in the battle,
mhm,
and they just have found their people.
mhm, mm. Well, you talked about souls, the soul care you provide, and I love that. And I guess I'd just love to hear you unpack more of what caring for those who care for others really looks like.
Mm.
Yeah, you were
So
talking about feeling seen and heard, and after you've done this for so many years, I'm sure you can see some themes of maybe the kind of work that global workers are doing that puts them in a place where they are actually really uniquely in need of this kind of deep inner work. Just tell us more about what you're learning
yes.
as an organization and how this looks in your context.
Yes, I am in awe. I've only been at Thrive less than 18 months, but I am in awe of what they have learned over the years and how they are able to show up. And it's true that the ministers are constantly giving. They give and they give and they give. And so how can we show up and give to the people who don't oftentimes think, what is good for me? What do I need? And so they are in a unique position of being very independent, maybe thinking they don't need or don't even deserve. Like, am I even worthy of this? Because they just want to pour their lives out for the Lord. I think about Paul's references of pouring myself out. Like with these women want to do that. They just want to pour themselves out. But as you can imagine, even with women we know here in the States, when you raise your children, you're trying to love your husband, you're trying to love your neighbor, give to your community, help be a part of the ministry that you're doing there, try to be in contact with the supporters back home that are sending you money or encouragement, um, or not. That's a whole nother conversation.
Mm,
But they are just giving, 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 and they're depleted, and they don't always know how to take care of themselves. They don't know how to recognize the signs of that. And there's a level of dignity still there, though, that you don't want to diminish what they're giving or say you're giving too much or that sort of thing, but just to show up in the most
mhm,
gentle, sweet way, like the Lord does for us. We just try to mimic the Lord's presence, the gentleness, the how are you? Like, let's just check in. Do you know how loved you are? Do you know how crazy we are about you? Do you know how much God loves you? And that it's not because of your works. It's not because you're serving him in some high pedestal position in the Christian hierarchy. It's not because of anything you did. It's because he loves you, he sees you, and he's crazy about you. And when you're the one ministering to everyone else, there just are not enough people doing that for you,
mhm,
especially one on one or in person. It's
mhm.
just a precious, precious gift.
Wow. You touched on some of this already, but I'm curious if you could unpack even more some of the unique contributing factors then to what makes this space so special for them. I'm thinking of things like a bit of a slowness, a bit of a
Mm,
spaciousness even, but like
that's true.
over the years you probably have really keyed in on some values that you want to make
Yes,
sure are present in all of these kinds of retreat spaces. And what are some of those values
yes.
that mean a lot to you all as an organization to bring into this space?
Well, several things are coming to my mind all at the same time. So, one is we limit to North American women, which can seem a little bit weird sometimes because there are a lot of women from other countries that are being sent out cross culturally. But when they are from North America, we know what their heart language is. We can more likely serve them. And so, worship in your heart language is a really big deal. When you are at a church and you know another language and you're trying to worship in another language, but coming back to worshiping in your heart language is a really significant thing. We
Mm,
also ask them what they miss from home. We call it Taste of Home. And church members all over the nation donate items that women have asked for. Like, oh, I just really miss Max Lucado books, or I really miss Kraft mac and cheese,
mm,
or I know it's silly, but I miss those Red Hots my grandma always used to have at her house. And just we take things like, for example, this, I don't know if you even know this, but we take 100 bags of chocolate chips, Nestle chocolate chips, on every
mm,
international retreat
mm,
because chocolate chips are not existent in some places and not nearly the same in
mm,
lots of other places. So this is sort of the window to a woman's heart is chocolate. You know this, right?
mm,
But bringing those chocolate chips is one of those things that either makes them squeal or cry or a little combination of both, because it's us saying, hey, we know this part is hard. So we love them
mm,
like that too. I also think that, and I hope this, I know that this isn't too sensitive for you. I know you can handle this. I hope the listeners can just brace themselves. But sometimes there's a disconnect with the church or with the sending agency, and they don't feel loved and known and seen. And I'm not trying to discourage the church or say that, they're failing or anything like that. But there are some times where that is not the safety factor. And so we provide a neutral space. We intentionally in small group time, these women are placed with not anyone from their same sending company so that they can speak freely. There isn't anyone that knows them that's going to go back and tattle to their church or their sending company, but that they can just be totally, fully vulnerable, known, seen, because they're completely safe. And we treasure that. We hold that tightly. We care for that deeply to be that neutral place for them. So I think that's another important part of it too. And then, like I mentioned, they have freedom to choose, like, oh, I'd love to go be with spiritual direction. Or sometimes we offer a workshop on grief and loss, and they can go just hear a little bit about that and process a little bit of that. So I think that space is good. They are in the power seat, they are empowered to take opportunities for what really moves them. And then we create this beautiful place for them to just be known and seen.
Mm. Yeah, I think this is wonderful. And from the very first time I heard about it, I kind of heard it being presented in two ways. One, the retreat,
Hmm.
that just sounded so incredible to provide kind of a lavish place for someone to really, really feel cared for and invite them to simply receive. And a lot of times
Yeah.
when you give someone that kind of invitation, like you're here, we want to serve you, and you get to receive, and then if you don't even pay attention to the details of what that would look like, well then it's like what am I receiving here? So like the way you all have learned over the years, I'm guessing to just keep on bringing more of uh, that care, even these care packages you're talking about, just so incredible.
The word that comes to my mind is intentionality.
Yeah.
I think that Thrive is incredibly intentional and we have a high level of excellence.
Yeah.
So the room is usually full of leaders. It's full of people who make things happen and make
Hmm.
things happen like this. They might even do retreats for their team.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden they're not in charge. Well, if you take a person who is usually in charge and you put them in a space where you do what you just said, where things aren't really thought through and it's
Hmm.
like, oh, let's wing it and this and that,
Hmm.
it actually creates anxiety in a leader that there isn't a plan here. And
Hmm.
I'm going to need to be thinking, and like the police officer who sits in a restaurant and has to
Hmm.
face the door. Like, I kind of need to monitor this because I don't trust that this is going to happen. And right out of the gate, these women know that the people who put this together, especially our retreat coordinators, they're just exceptional. Um, that they've thought of everything.
Hmm.
They've
Hmm.
really thought of it, and now they're humans, right? But they go to incredible extent to just really have everything thought of. And right away, women tell me, "Oh, I can tell like that you guys have got this. I can
Hmm.
just relax and just take
Yes.
a ride because
Yeah.
you're in charge and you've got a plan, and I can relax." And that's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to give a leader who's usually responsible for a lot of things.
That is so good. I love that you just unpacked that even more for me. Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, Wow. I'd love to back up even further now and just get to know you a little bit more. You said you've been with Thrive for about 18 months,
Mhm.
and I think you've been in Colorado for maybe a couple years-ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have a story, a journey that led you here to Colorado. It's a ministry journey, I know. Love to just have a chance for you to share your story too.
Sure.
Just about, yeah, your even finding your way to coaching. I know that's a something we're
Mhm.
going to talk about here in a little bit, but what was it like to
Sure.
be Abigail growing up and growing into faith and uh, your life as a mom and a wife and ministry leader?
Sure, sure. Thank you. Yeah, it's beautiful to share our stories because we
Hmm.
see God at work even when at the time we weren't sure where he was. And
That's
so I
right.
think looking backward is always nice. I think about the rocks of remembrance in Joshua, like put these rocks up, and when your children ask, what do these stones mean? You get to tell them. And so
Mm.
what a privilege to get to share a little bit. A quick flyby of my life would be that I grew up in a secular home, not really a lot of talk about God except for my grandma when I would go visit her. And she always told me that Jesus loved me.
Mm,
And that was really precious. And then my family was shaken when my parents got divorced when I was 14,
mm,
and I didn't see it coming at all. And then my dad came out as gay. And so it caused a lot of questions for me.
mm,
My mom's way of dealing with it all was to take me to church. And I was really ticked. I was that typical adolescent, like, wait a second, what's going on here? And it shaped in me a time of a lot of questions and skepticism and doubt, and all of that very much prevailed. God, in his sovereignty, put a couple people at that church that just loved me and saw me and seemed unfazed by my bad choices and questions and all of that. And they just loved me well. And I grew to be more comfortable in the church and with Christians. And then they sent me on a chrysalis retreat, which is part of the Emmaus community that came out of the Methodist Church. And I went to that. And that's when I really heard about the agape love of God and that Jesus loved me. And at the time, I just had a ton of questions for God. And I just wanted a lot of answers. And Jesus was so real to me that weekend as a junior in high school that I sat in the chapel and they gave us a red piece of paper and a big nail, and we could write something to give to God and nail it to the cross. And that's when I really had my reckoning with the Lord. And I said, okay, God, I can tell Jesus is real. I can tell, like I can feel it. I know God is real and Jesus is real. And I guess we're just going to have to figure the rest out together.
mhm,
And so I wrote the words, my doubts, like those two words, my doubts, on that red piece of paper. And I'm like, okay, God, let's do this. And right when I folded that piece of paper up, someone else was nailing their paper to the cross. And in that little chapel, that sound just resonated over me and secured and sealed something in me that was so beautiful and so real to me. And then I would love to say everything changed, immediately, but that's not how it goes. But a couple years later, I went to college and my neighbor was a Christian and on fire for Jesus, like a real Jesus follower, I guess you could say. And she invited me to things on campus, and I got to know more about the Lord. And I ended up with Campus Crusade for Christ. And then I reconciled with my dad and established a relationship with him. And I went to Columbus to stay with my dad, and I met my husband.
mm,
And we just thought we were just going to have a fun summer dating and whatnot. But he grew in the Lord exceptionally. He actually accepted Christ after I met him. I think he would say, his parents would say that he was a Christian and he grew up in the church, but it wasn't personal to him.
mhm,
And through a pizza coupon, he had someone from Crew share the gospel with him, and he was like, "That's what I need." And so college was a time of growing. And you haven't met my husband yet, but I can't wait for you to. He is an apologist at heart. He's a really smart guy, and now he has his master's of theology from Dallas Theological. But it was like God gave me him. He was a vending machine of answers.
mm,
And so this sweet answer to prayer where I was like, God, I have a lot of questions. And
mm,
Scott he was a good representative of the Lord, that he never grew weary of my questions. Like,
mm,
wait a second, how can we really know the Bible is true? And why does it say that there and then this? And what does that mean? And now he's probably a little more Socratic, like, well, what do you think? But back then he was just like, he knew, he had all the answers, and it was just what I needed. So it was
mm,
awesome. Before I knew it, God had called us to ministry, and we were in Dallas, Texas, grew up all the ministry years in Dallas, and
mm,
we're active in an incredible Bible Belt incubator, and just learned from some of the best, and grew in my faith a lot, grew in ministry, how to do ministry. And it was then that our marriage story, our marriage almost fell apart. And after God put us together, he used us to minister to other marriages, and which I completely did not feel adequate, right?
mm,
Like God has this tricky way of helping us use our stories before we're fully feeling ready to use our stories. But we got active in marriage work, and just being present with people. Like we didn't feel
Hmm.
like we had any answers. We just would sit with them and we'd share our story. And then we ended up becoming certified coaches. And that really changed my life. And I'm just rambling on, but how do you encapsulate 49 years, But um, this was a beautiful part of my story. We had four kids by this point. I have four
Hmm.
daughters, and they're in college, adulting, and in high school now. But that coaching, we had done so much discipleship with Campus Crusade, and then we did so much pastoral care for a number of years. We were doing that for years before we got certified as coaches. And so what happened was God created this mashup in us, this heart of a discipler, the empathy of pastoral care, but then the restraint to not tell them what to do from being coach trained.
Hmm.
Um, that really helped us ask questions to help them intrinsically find their motivation of what their next step would be, instead of us presuming that we would know what's best for you and in
Hmm.
what time frame. And that was really freeing and beautiful. And it ended up in us training others because we were showing up for people at multiple churches in our area. And they were like, we want to do this. We want to know how to love like you love and show up like you show up. And so we started training folks, and that's what Equipping for Impact is today. My heart to equip people to show up well, especially as Christians.
Hmm.
We need to show up well.
The showing up well sounds like it leads into the book that you wrote together, your husband
Yeah.
Scott and you, Authentic Conversations, Unlocking Your Ability to Connect with Others. So I think you might have mentioned this briefly, in terms of finding your way to coaching. It's interesting to me that you said in coaching you found a way of being present to others that wasn't giving answers.
Hmm.
And I think that's something I just want to like pause in this conversation because
Yes.
that's not always what we think of when we think of coaches,
Hmm.
right? So now
Oh, it's true.
tell us about like just a little bit about coaching then and maybe different kinds of coaching and what kind of coaching you're talking about that
Oh, I so
you
appreciate that. And I hope your podcast blows up to millions of listeners so that we can educate
come
people.
on.
Yes, coaching has a reputation. It has its roots in coaching Olympic athletes and executive coaching, getting people to move up to the next levels and so on and so forth. And so I understand that there is some perspective of direction and training up of someone. But what I'm referring to is what the International Coaching Federation would call like pure coaching, or like the gold, like client focused, collaborative. Some people call it co-creating. And what this means is the client is really the person that's in charge, and that we are going to come alongside them so much more effectively if we help them come to the conclusion of what is next. And in my own journey as a Christ follower, I had to peel back some layers of pride and of knowing, because I presumed, as a driven entrepreneur woman who is a mover and a shaker, I presumed that I would know what is best for someone. Well, stop the truck, right? Because that person is a different personality. They have a different family of origin, perhaps a different culture. They have different life experiences that are shaping who they are. I don't know what it's like to be married to that person that they're married to. I don't know what it's like to have the journey they had, the spiritual journey they had. And honestly, I got to a place, Adam, where I was like, shame on me. Shame on me for presuming that because I know the Bible says this and you're telling me this is your problem, that this is your answer.
Mm,
Shame on me. That is, and it's not sticky either.
mm.
It's not sticky.
Say more about that.
You shouldn't, you could say to someone comes to the church, they want pastoral care. I'm
Hmm.
living with my boyfriend and I really love him and I can't afford to be on my own, but I kind of feel like it's not right, or my mom makes me feel like it's not right and I don't know what to do. Well, traditional pastoral care, you listen, you care, and then you say, the Bible says this. Let me pray for you. Go and go and do something different. Well, she leaves there. She's possibly not any different. It's possible that she wasn't fully seen or heard. It's possible that she wasn't able to peel back the obstacles or the questions or the real issue underneath all of that. And so there's no real change. And, it's not only pastoral care that experiences this. I know doctors give great direction. They have a ton of education and experience, and they tell people what medicine to take and what to do, and it doesn't happen. And financial advisors, who I have been working with a lot lately to help them have some coaching skills, they feel like they give financial advice and people don't go and do it. So
Mhm.
I'm seeing, what's the commonality? Doctors, financial advisors, pastors, like we're telling people what to do from our expertise, but they are not ready for that. It's a journey of unpacking the transition they're in and their own approach to change and how they're wired and what's next and the conviction of the Holy Spirit in their lives. Like we have a role to play, but I just don't believe it's in telling you what to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay. Well, good. Yes, I hope this podcast blows up so people hear that message right there. Too often, we are going around looking for someone to tell us, what does God say? You tell, like almost like the people with Moses, right? Like you go up, talk to God, we're afraid of God, and you just tell us whatever God says and we'll do it. And I think, wouldn't it be great to help lead people into this authentic conversation with God
Yes.
first and
Yeah.
foremost, where they are able
Would.
to begin to listen and
Mhm.
respond to the presence of God. Now we're getting into what I think is spiritual direction, and I think what you're
Yeah.
describing as coaching with a bit of a different intent. But
Right.
essentially, this kind of transformation is going to happen when we get connected to our own desires, our own fears, our own anxieties, our own will or lack of will, and really get to the root with God helping us get to the root.
Yes.
And that's what I call like transformational coaching. But
Yes, absolutely. I
and I
love
would
that.
use yeah, and I would use that language kind of, well, what is that? Why would I use that distinction? For one, I would say some kind of coaching that feels more transactional,
Mhm.
or if you kind of if all you want is some fixes, like the typical coach who's gonna like maybe coach me how to make a better golf swing, right? Tell me what you see and tell me what to shift, and I'll shift it because I can't see it. But if you tell me, I'll do
Right.
it, right? And
Right.
just go, okay, that was it right there. Keep doing that. Keep doing that. No, don't do that. Do that. Like that's this
Sure.
kind of idea of like push this button, pull that lever, and you'll see some different results. Adjust your hands, adjust your grip. Okay, but transformational coaching is really getting to this deeper thing about what are these limiting beliefs that you have that's stopping you from moving into this,
Definitely.
right? Yeah.
Definitely. Yes,
Mhm.
transformational is where it's at. I can think of a classic example of someone comes to me for coaching because they need to reorganize their things. Their kids just went to college, they're empty nesting, and they want to just like reclaim the house and get things organized. And they haven't been able to do it for 3 months, even though they wanted to do that. And they come to me
Mhm.
with that. Well, a person might think a coach would help you break that big task into smaller tasks or
Mhm.
help you make a strategy or help you
Mhm.
set deadlines or help you integrate accountability. And that could all be true. But I think transformational is tell me what's going on when you think about doing it and you don't.
Mhm.
What's going on with that? What are you feeling? What's happening inside you? And kind of learning and growing from that, like who are you and what's
Mhm.
going on and what kind of transition are you in and how is that at play in your life and just kind of peeling back the layers so
Mhm.
we can get to it. It might take us 3 sessions to finally get back to the closet and why,
Mhm.
what's going on there because there's so much more. And a little pet peeve of mine is when people think they have to have an exact goal to come to coaching
Okay.
and say if you want less of something or more of something or you're just feeling dissatisfied or like God is doing something you can't quite put your finger on it, that come to coaching. We'll figure
Mhm.
it out together.
Oh
You don't have to
wow.
come saying I've got this thing I want to do, help me achieve it.
Yeah. Right.
I think what I do is probably more spiritual and more
Mm.
personal than what people think coaching is.
Wow. I'm totally just loving and applauding what I'm hearing from you right now. All right, so back to your book. I went off on a little side note there,
Sure.
but the book, Authentic Conversations, sounds like what you're trying to bring into a coaching environment.
Right.
It also sounds like what we would all benefit from in terms of our own connectivity in, within our culture, within our churches, within our organizations, back to the women, of Thrive,
That's right.
serving. Right. So, yeah, just tell us a
Right.
little bit more about the book. And I guess the question I am curious from your perspective is, what are you sensing in our current kind of cultural context? Maybe it's the Western context. I'm not even sure exactly where you'd want to go, that is actively working against our deeper connection. And
Mm,
how, because your book is really saying, hey, we can have a deeper connection,
hmm.
but what are the forces at play that make this so difficult these days, right?
Sure, sure. Oh my goodness, there are so many things. Yeah, let me say something about authentic conversations first, and then I'll go into that. So, we started a training program to train and certify coaches. And our intention from the beginning was you don't have to go off and be a coach. You don't have to be a professional coach. You don't have to call yourself a coach. We just believe in these skills and these tools and in a Christian program, when I do it for Christians, the main goal is to be in touch with the Holy Spirit and to recognize that power in you. And then also to process through some of the good skills you need and some of the habits you need to let go to the side. Maybe a desire to help, a desire to fix, a desire to say something that's of profound value when really listening is an incredible gift. So we love training and certifying coaches. And since then, my husband's doing other things, and I'm offering more training and more opportunity in smaller doses for people who want coaching skills. But right when COVID hit, when some people were learning to play guitar or knit or whatever people we were all doing during the
Bake
pandemic.
sourdough bread.
Oh, is that what you were doing? Is that what you and Rebecca were doing, making sourdough bread?
If Rebecca listens to this, or any of our friends, I want to be very honest. No, this is not something I have done. It is something Rebecca has done. I have
Let
yet
the
to
record
even
state.
learn the science behind it. I just enjoy the smell and the
Oh,
flavor
I
and
love
everything
sourdough.
about a piece of toasted sourdough bread with some butter on it.
Yes.
So thank you,
Oh,
Rebecca, and you get all the
Rebecca,
credit.
please make me some. I would be a great appreciator. Okay, so during COVID, what we did was we were in transition. We'd been doing a nonprofit. We started a nonprofit and ran it to help equip with these coaching skills. And we knew God was bringing it to a close at 7 years. And so we were at a transition, going back to pastoring. And we sat on the deck in our COVID-free zone, and I felt very led to write things down. And I just asked my husband, like, okay, 15 years in, what do you know for sure?
Hmm.
What do you know? It was a transition time for us to just pause. We had nowhere else to go, nowhere else to be. So I'm like, let's just take stock. Like, we've learned a lot, we've tried a lot, we've grown a lot, we've done a ton. Like, at that point, we'd met with hundreds of couples. What do you know?
Hmm.
And this is what came out of that, because
Hmm.
not everyone has time to go to coach training. Not everyone wants to learn in that kind of format. But I think, especially for believers, we need to recognize that there are a lot of unchurched and dechurched people around us. And we need to start walking like we're sticky, like we really do care what's going
Hmm.
on with
Hmm.
our person at the gym or a neighbor or someone in our family. Like, if we do care, we need to start having communication skills that reflect that we care.
Wow.
And this is what we think we can do to really make that authentic connection with each other. So it's a layperson's pastoral coaching book.
Wow. I'm just going to read off some of the chapters, some of the essential skills you
Yeah.
identify, and maybe a little bit of the myths as well. But so each chapter has a skill with several myths kind of connected to it. So I just think it's fascinating. Like, some of the skills would be hear their story, and and a myth connected to that would be uh, the first problem they come with is the real problem. That's the
It's
myth.
not the real problem.
Right. It's not,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right,
hear their story. Don't just hear the first thing and assume that that's the fullness of
right.
what the problem is. But then also another skill, listen well. And I love this because we've been talking about listening so much in our podcast. And here, I think a couple great myths that you bring up. One myth, only trained counselors or pastors are effective listeners or can be. And the
Mm-hmm.
second myth would be I have to say something profound to add value to my neighbor or that person at the gym or that person, in front of me at the supermarket, right? That if I don't know enough,
Right.
if I don't know what I would say to every presenting problem, then I probably should, because I don't know if that I would add value. So this idea of listening kind of takes these myths and says, come on, like that's not that point. Listening well has something else happening here.
For sure. I've heard it say that listening is love. Like
Mm,
listening is loving and loving is listening.
hmm
When we think, I mean, how performance based and self-focused are we that what a pressure we put on ourselves. Okay, I'm listening. I'm trying to listen. What smart thing can I say? Oh, I can relate to your story. I've been through something like that
right.
too. Or you're going to be okay. Or what scripture could I say that would lift you up? At least you've got this,
hmm
like silver lining it a little bit for them. These things are not helpful and they
hmm
actually are detrimental. So to just dial in and listen authentically and say, thank you for sharing that with me,
hmm
that sounds
hmm
hard.
Yep.
Drop the mic. Like you don't even need to follow that up with something else. If I am talking to someone that I care about, like not a stranger in the store, but if say I'm passing on church on Sunday morning and someone dumps something on me like that, I might say, I would love to talk with you more about that. If you want to
hmm
talk more, please call me, or can I text you later to see if you want to call? So I could make myself available. If I don't have time, I won't say that. If I can't give it, I don't say it. But I think it's just beautiful to listen and to just let go of the fact that you need to say something because sometimes it's going to be the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So don't say
Well,
it.
of all the things not to say, how would you rate the I can relate to that response?
Well, that's a tricky one because you have to listen to the Holy Spirit because sometimes it's really nice to know you're not alone and that someone else
There's something about normalizing, right? That's
there
the
is
thing.
something to normalizing. So we can't really qualify that as bad generically, but I call it steal the microphone.
Yeah.
Careful not to steal the microphone. They might have more they wanted to say about that, or they just needed some space. And when we say, "Oh, I've experienced that," I just kind of give the illustration of stealing the microphone.
Yeah.
And you have more things you wanted to say, but now I'm talking about
Oh
me.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there's just you need to be sensitive to the
That's
moment, I
good.
think.
Yeah, that's good. And I also just think that we talked about this earlier too. Like we really don't know that we can relate to that because we haven't been walking
Right.
in their shoes. We haven't been married to that spouse. We haven't had the exact same issues.
Yes.
And so to kind of make a lot of presumptions like that, and
Mhm.
by stealing the microphone, but it's also just saying, I'm kind of done maybe listening to the fullness of your story.
Yes. That's so well said, Adam. That's
Mm,
exactly it. And
mm,
I help people understand that and unpack that in a way that helps them change, that helps them do something different.
yeah. Well, there's several other skills and myths connected. Let me see. There's a section in there on refraining from fixing. So asking questions, good questions, pursuing intentionally. And the last one is trusting the process. One of my friends just posted this quote by Thomas Merton, who he said, I have come to think that care of the soul requires a high degree of resistance to the culture around us, simply
Mm.
because that culture is dedicated to values that have no concern for the soul.
Yes, I think that I'm reading the ruthless, what is it? The
Elimination of
hurry.
hurry.
Yes, ruthless elimination of hurry. I'm reading that right now, and it's really ministering to me. And so I think that we would say technology is at its height. This year, I mentioned I have two high schoolers. Neither of them are permitted to have their phones in class.
mm,
at all.
mm,
So we've moved to a place where we're recognizing, and the teachers are even citing as part of their reason for having this rule, which is school wide and they can't have a say about it anyway. But they're citing the research that we're noticing about kids not learning and about the distraction, the attention
mhm,
deficit that is happening because of it. But also there's an anxiety of like, what am I missing out on, or who's trying to connect with me, and what's my responsibility to get back. So I think we are more technologized and less connected than ever. And I think that COVID kind of cracked it open and helped us realize that we really do need each other. We need fellowship with other humans. But some of us are still finding our way back to true community right now. We're not
mm,
sure who to trust. There's more
mm,
divisiveness than ever. And there isn't a level of grace and space for you to be who you are, for me to be who I am, for us to be on a journey and to care about each other genuinely. There just isn't a lot of that. And when I look at our neighbors and our streets and our churches and our business places, I just feel like we're running really fast and disconnected, and
mhm,
we're not quite sure how to get back. And
mhm.
we're not quite sure how to care for our souls either. But I am hopeful that, let's end on hope. I am hopeful that kind of like from this deficit, like the way we learned how lonely we were and how loneliness is bad for mental health during COVID, I hope we learn from this level of hurry and technology that it really is warring on our souls, and that we need
Mhm.
to find that that would somehow draw to our attention. Wait a second, I haven't even paid attention to like who I am as a human being. What is God made me in his image? What's going on there? Who am I? And just to pause, to be more self-aware and to have the value for a soul. But I think we've got a ways to go. I think we've
Mm,
got some work to do.
mm. I heard you say finding our way back, and that just really resonated with me. And I want to draw back then the beginning of our conversation with Thrive all the way through everything we've talked about. Um, and the importance of listening again now. It's all what you said about being loved, noticing love,
Mhm,
allowing ourselves to be loved. Okay, so rambling, bringing this all back. When the women are experiencing the kind of care for their
mhm,
souls
mhm,
Thrive is providing, whether it's through the retreats or through this alongside ministry of spiritual direction
mhm,
and mentoring and coaching, they're finding a way back, I
mhm.
think, to home. I think they're finding their way back home to
That's
God's
right.
love. And I think we all
That's
need that.
We do. I'll tell you, as a little commercial for volunteering with Thrive, we do incredibly well at training up volunteers. So I was telling a big church in the Dallas area that I was just meeting with last week, send some women to volunteer with Thrive. The training they will receive to learn how to love your other missionaries well, even when they are not connected to Thrive, is going to be a game changer.
Mhm,
We love, I think that's a secret of Thrive that not a lot of people know, is we are cultivating environments and raising up people to love well.
mhm,
And I think that we need to further that for sure. So if you're not sure
mhm.
how to do it, get some training, ask God to help and continue to be part of that solution, and be willing to prioritize seeking out people who will listen and love you well.
Especially if you're someone who cares for others. Like, I
Yes.
mean, I think everyone needs soul care, but really, leaders, if you're listening to this right now, whether you're in ministry, organizational leadership, doesn't matter. Even parents, I mean, really, if you are in some kind of a form caring for others, my question for you is, who is caring for you?
That's right.
And there are people who want to come alongside you and care for you.
Mhm.
Uh, I mentioned at the very beginning, we have several people with our LifePoint team connected to Thrive. They have served in capacity as a spiritual director at retreats or meeting with women throughout the year as well,
Yes.
and mentoring. So we love your ministry, and you're the first person kind of within the organization, I've had a chance to actually express that too. And so
Oh,
I would love for you to just receive my gratitude, our gratitude as an organization who cares about caring for people's souls as well. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for being faithful to the call. I'm so thankful that people have a chance to meet you. And how can they connect with you and your ministries, both?
yes. Yes. Thriveministry.org is where you can find everything about Thrive. And you can communicate with us there, and we would love to help you. And as a development director, I have the privilege of helping develop partnerships and relationships. And so I'm glad to talk with you even when you don't know, like, oh, my sister's a missionary, I want to have some questions about it, or
Mhm.
I might want to volunteer, or I might want to give money or whatever. Like, it doesn't even matter what it is. We're just glad to have a conversation with you and help you get connected. And then my business that I do on the side is called Equipping for Impact, and it's equippingforimpact.com. And you can certainly go there and find me there, doing what I'm doing,
Mhm.
with training people up. So
Mhm.
it's a privilege. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to serve the Lord and to walk this out in something that's so purposeful and meaningful to me. He's good. He's a good God. And I'm excited about what's next and how we can continue to journey together.
Hmm. Yes, I'm very grateful for you. I'm grateful that you live so close and that soon, sometime soon, Scott and you and my wife, Rebecca and I will be meeting somewhere for some Mexican food. I think we both
I love
decided we
it.
want to make that happen. So thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
your time with us today, Abigail.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening to the Being Formed podcast. I'm always grateful to hear when someone says they're tuning in and loving these conversations. So keep on sharing with other people in your life. I'm recording this outro from Malaga, Spain. So until next time, gracia y paz.